Hi everybody, here's Krystian from Teamworkcast, and I'm here with another video talking a little bit about how we record videos here on Teamworkcast. Something that we have been doing a lot recently was to record card games, especially Netrunner, and I wanted to post a video explaining a little bit our setup. We've been asked a lot of times by a lot of people on the internet how we record all those card games, and so today I would like to talk especially about the cameras we're using. But before we go into the cameras, if you want to record like Netrunner or Magic cards or whatever, or board games, I would like to recommend you to check out our previous videos on podcasting, especially the one about microphones. I think this is a very important aspect that a lot of people actually aren't considering. They're focusing on the cameras and stuff like that. You should definitely look into microphone first before thinking about cameras. But continuing to the cameras, today I wanted to talk about 3 different setups. I wanted to introduce you to 3 different kinds of setups, and you can then decide on your own, what kind of setup you like the best and which setup fits your purposes. So let us start with the first setup that I want to talk about, which is to use a cell phone. You probably already own one, so that's really great. And there is actually a lot of, or at least I know one very well-known Netrunner recorder, streamer, video person who uses a cell phone to record their Netrunner games, which is Dave from netrunner.co.uk. He uses some kind of Android phone. I'm not exactly sure which one. You should have asked him about that. And it's really nice, really convenient setup. Very easy to get started with that. They're also very small and quite portable, so you don't have to, lug around with you some kind of huge amount of hardware, which can be especially important when you're going to like very big, very crowded tournaments and you're recording your videos there. And something I really like about cell phones is that they're USB powered. So you can attach them to like something like a power bank, one of those little things here, and you can get a lot of battery power out of them, and you are independent of AC power, but you also of course have the opportunity to attach it just to an AC adapter and plug it into a wall if there is an opportunity there. Now, one thing that is kind of like a disadvantage with cell phones, something that you have to look out for, is the recording capacity. You kind of need a lot of space to record HD videos for a very long time. I mean, those games take, 1 hour or so. So you kind of need a lot of space to store those videos. And so that's why, for example, something like Apple phones are not the best phones to do that, because they cannot use any SD cards. You cannot expand their memory capacity anyway. Android phones have the advantage that many of them have like an SD card slot, and that's certainly a cool way to do this. With iPhones, I guess you would have get a new generation iPhone. For example, the one I have here is like an iPhone 4S, and that's useless for this kind of purpose because it has only like 16 gigs of memory, and most of it is already used up with all my junk. So I would maybe get in 1 game on this, and that's going to be it. Generally, you need something between 5 or 9 gigs for 1 hour of recording of HD footage. But this number can change depending on what kind of recording settings you're using. So, that's something you kind of have to test out with your device. Just record for 1 hour or half an hour and see what it does, how much space it takes up. So if you want to get started with this, there's basically 3 things you want to get with this. One is a tripod, and we're going to talk about tripods like in the next video, because this is kind of like a tricky situation, I think. So the next thing is a tripod mount. There is actually special attachment that you can use to put like a cell phone on a tripod, and they're very cheap, and you can get them off of Amazon or eBay or whatever. The third thing you want to get is probably a power bank. Again, I really recommend using power banks. I have very good experiences with it. It's really nice so that you don't have to attach a cable somewhere in the store. Some stores don't have cables, and then you're very much restricted to the area around the socket in a wall. And just using like the power bank will basically power your entire thing for the entire tournament. Moving on to the second setup, which is using a photo camera to record those images, which I know, I guess I know only one video Netrunner person who records card games with a photo camera, and that is Scott from Netrunner with Scott. He uses a Panasonic GF2, I think, with a 20mm lens on it, which is, I think, a 40mm equivalent. This is a really, really nice, really high quality setup, and that's basically the main advantage of this kind of setup. You get tremendously amazing quality out of this, especially in low light situation. Those cameras are incredibly capable. I personally just bought one of those, and I'm actually using it to record this video right now. I will try to use it to record Netrunner videos, but as I realized very quickly, it's not that easy. I can show you a camera that might work for this. As an example, here's for example a camera that my girlfriend uses. This is an NX200 from Samsung, and something I really like about this camera is that it uses it's a 16mm lens. It's a 25mm equivalent for a full-size camera. And so this is like a very, very wide angle lens that is really great at capturing the table if you're filming from close up. It is not that of an expensive camera, but it's still probably the most expensive option from the ones we're discussing here right now. So this is basically one of the main disadvantages of this setup. It's very, very expensive to get it going. It's also very, very complicated. There is a lot of parts attached. Probably if you buy one of those cameras off Amazon or eBay or whatever, it won't be able to record those videos out of the box. You will have to buy a lot of kit, a lot of accessories to make it work. And that's something you really, really have to invest a lot of time in. Not something I would do like if you never recorded videos previously. Another disadvantage of those cameras is that it's sometimes difficult to power them through AC because they usually don't have an AC plug. Some of the cameras do, some don't. It depends on kind of what camera you will get. For example, the camera I'm using right now with this video is a Lumix GH2, and it doesn't have a power plug. So I had to buy a complicated adapter that goes into the battery slot and then plug it into the wall. I know that Scott from Netrunning with Scott had a similar problem, where I think he used a different model of a camera previously and didn't have any kind of way of attaching it to an AC plug, so he had to buy a lot of batteries and charge those batteries during tournaments, which really, really is annoying and can often just make you lose the entire recording because your camera runs out of juice during a game. I saw there are also power banks that can be used to power some of the cameras, but again, this requires a lot of research and really depends on the kind of camera you're using. So again, something for a kind of like a high-end type of recording. However, if you want to get into those, there's basically two main important things you should be worried about. One is again the AC adapter or power or battery solution, whatever. How do you want to keep recording like 5 hours straight on the go with this camera? Something you have to figure out. And the second thing that you have to get or figure out is basically a lens. You need a really nice lens. Again, Scott is using a 40mm equivalent. I think that is a bit limiting because you kind of have to set up your tripod a bit far away from the people you're recording. So depending on the venue, you might get into trouble setting stuff up. I would recommend something more wider, something up to 25mm equivalent. Moving on to the third setup, and my favorite setup, and a setup we've been using here on Teamworkcast quite successfully. Not only on Teamworkcast, by the way. From what I understand, the guys from Team Covenant are also using this kind of setup. So that's something I would definitely recommend maybe going in, which is using a GoPro camera. We started out back in the days with a GoPro 2 camera. Many of our first videos, I think all the way up to, let me think, German Nationals 2014. So all the videos before that were recorded with a GoPro 2, and all the videos afterwards have been recorded with a GoPro 3 Plus Black Edition. The main advantages of this kind of setup is that, again, it's quite of a cheap camera. You can get them used very cheaply, and they're kind of like, if you buy them, they're basically capable of recording those games out of the box. You will really need very, very little accessories for this. This is basically the size of kind of like a matchbox, really tiny, so it doesn't take up a lot of space in your pack, and you can set it up on really, really busy tournaments and it won't get in the way. It stays quite inconspicuous, and you can just focus on the game. And again, as with the cell phones, those are USB powered. Early on, I was actually using a lot of batteries. I bought like 3 batteries and recharged them during recording. Like, I always recharge another battery in the back. That worked fine, but these days I just don't care. I just bought like one of those power banks. They're really, really nice. they last for an entire tournament. I mean, this one power bank lasted me for 6 rounds of Swiss. And something I really like about the GoPro is that it has really nice wide lens. It is so wide, in fact, that you don't have to even record in the widest setting. You can record it like the mid setting, and you still will be able to capture the entire table and a little bit of surrounding. I think this is very important, because some players, when you're playing like Jinteki and you like put all the cards on the table, create lots of remote servers, sometimes, you will have to use stuff from outside of your playmat, and then it's really nice to have this kind of like security margin, so you capture stuff outside of the 2 playmats. There's at least 2 disadvantages with this kind of setup, with the GoPro setup. One is that the GoPro doesn't have any kind of viewfinder. You will have to, at least with the newest model, you will have to like create like Wi-Fi with a GoPro, and then use your cell phone to connect to the GoPro, and then you can preview the image of the GoPro on the cell phone. That is a little bit cumbersome. It takes a bit of time to set up. Not too bad, but it's kind of like a bit of a disadvantage there. You can buy external viewfinders that you just clip on the back of the GoPro, but those are just ridiculously expensive, and I just don't care. Another disadvantage of the GoPro is that it doesn't have the best low light capabilities. So, in the evening where they turn down the lights a little bit or something, or maybe you don't have the best spot, the best table on the venue, you will get slightly blurry quality, and you will need to tweak the footage quite a bit to get the details out of the image. Something you can work around by just basically picking a good spot always in the venue, just making sure you have a very well lit table that you're recording at. And to be honest, that's kind of like a problem that you will have with any type of camera. Cameras need light to record. So what are the things that you need to start recording with a GoPro? Well, assuming you already have a tripod, you will first need a tripod adapter, which is this kind of little thing. It just screws on the top of the tripod, and you can just attach the GoPro to it. No problem, it's very cheap. Then, as I said, you probably will need a power bank, or at least I strongly recommend a power bank. You can go with batteries, but then you need additional batteries. My experience is that you need 1 battery per round of Swiss. So each battery lasts around 1.5 rounds of Swiss. So in a tournament with like 5 rounds of Swiss, you would need 5 batteries. But you can, of course, get away with like 3 batteries. And always, while you're recording 1 round, you recharge one of the empty batteries in the back. Or you just get, again, a power bank, and that basically solves all your power needs, at least for most tournaments. And again, something I haven't mentioned in the other setups, but yes, you will need, of course, storage space. So I got myself like a 64 gigabyte memory card. And I basically only run out of space once, which was in the playoffs of the German nationals. I recorded all the Swiss rounds just fine. There were 6 Swiss rounds, and I think they fit all on the card. But once we got in the playoffs, I had to, like, in the break in between, download some of the files on my PC, or the card would overflow. So yeah, 64 gigabytes should last for most of the tournaments. If you want to really record like one of the nationals with playoffs or regionals, you probably need maybe another 32 gigabytes. As for which type of GoPro to get, that's kind of like a difficult question. Again, the ones we've been using is the 3 Plus Black edition, but there's like different types of editions, and there's like the 4th one now, so it gets really complicated. I know there's certainly one I would recommend against, which is kind of like, there's a new model that just came out recently, which has like this gray housing, which is just called the GoPro, and it's the cheapest one. I don't really like that one because it is firmly attached into the housing. You cannot actually get it out of the housing. And there's a lot of really nice accessories on the GoPro that work with the naked camera without the housing. Another huge disadvantage of that one is that it doesn't have Wi-Fi, so really don't have any kind of viewfinder. And that's severely limiting. It's very frustrating to record a very excellent game and then look at the footage back home and realize that you just didn't record half of the playing field because the camera wasn't adjusted properly. This is really frustrating, and it can very easily happen if there is no viewfinder like on this cheap version. And one final thing that I really don't like about it, again, because you cannot remove it from the housing, you cannot actually exchange the batteries. Shouldn't be a big problem if you're using a power bank, but every now and then maybe the power bank doesn't work or something, and you really want to have like this security blanket of being able to just plug in a battery that you have in your backpack and keep on recording. So maybe instead of buying one of those very, very cheap new one GoPros, I would maybe go, if you're tight on budget, I would maybe get a used GoPro 2, for example. They're very, very cheap. Lots of people are trying to get rid of them on eBay, and they find quality good to get you started. Now, I will say that the GoPro 2 also doesn't have Wi-Fi capabilities, so you might have to buy a Wi-Fi backpack, which is an accessory you can plug on the back, and then you will get the Wi-Fi capabilities as well, and everything will be fine. So that's it for this video. And in our next video, we're going to talk about the tripod and all the accessories, the placement and stuff like that, all those beautiful things. Meanwhile, if you are recording board games or card games on the internet or somewhere else, and you have a really, really cool setup, really cool recommendation for a setup, then certainly post them in comments and share it with us. So see you next time. Until then, hack the planet.